Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Relo Andes webinar. I am Rachel Martin. I'm a virtual English language fellow working with the U.S. Embassy in Lima, Peru. And today I want to introduce our guest presenter, our guest expert here, my colleague and my friend, Dinorah Saap.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. She's an English teacher and a professional development consultant who has worked all over the world. And as she takes a moment to introduce herself, we would love to hear from you. Where are you watching us from? Oh, hello, and greetings right back to you in Bolivia. Go ahead and type in the chat if you are watching us on Facebook Live or YouTube Live. We would love to hear where you're watching from.
So hello, everybody. Nice to see you. Nice to be here with Rachel, and thank you for the invitation. So as Rachel said, my name is Dinorah Saap, and I am working with the U.S. Embassy in Chile. I was an English language fellow who was supposed to be starting in February. So hello, Chile, if you're watching. But I am very, very happy and very, very honored to be here. I am working with teachers throughout Chile, the binational centers, and doing professional development, just helping people out while they're transitioning to the online world now.
Okay, well, I'm so glad you're here. Today we're talking about writing and how to improve student writing, and I know this is a topic that you're very passionate about.
Yes, so as my bio says, I'm originally from Mexico, so I am a second language learner still, and I started as a second language writer, so I'm very familiar with what my students go through when they're trying to write. And so I also studied music. That was my bachelor's degree. And I worked at the University of Mississippi in the US for 13 years. Now I'm based in Indiana. And again, it's been great getting to know teachers all over the world and learners all over the world and be able to help them out, especially in their writing skills.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of your expertise. Today, we're going to be talking about the kind of specific idea of something that you can do with your students to help them improve their writing skills. So today, we are going to be talking about writers' conferences. And if you aren't familiar with those, they're a little bit different than the grading that we normally do as teachers on an essay. Maybe you're used to just marking down some corrections and giving it back. In a writer's conference, we have an even bigger goal because we're trying to fix the paper or the paragraph that is in front of us. But even more importantly, we're trying to help the students become independent writers. So can you tell me, Dinorah, where does this fit? How does this connect with some of those other forms of feedback that teachers might be used to giving?
Right. So we have different forms of feedback, and today we're going to focus on some of them that had to do with how much feedback you give the students and what you want the students specifically to do. So one form of feedback is direct feedback. So that's what most of us do or we're used to doing, basically correcting each error and giving it back to the student. So the student knows what they did wrong and then they might be able to correct it. We hope so. And indirect feedback is when you indicate the error but don't correct it necessarily. So you make the student aware that there's something going on in there, but you don't provide the answer to the student. So we employ this by highlighting with different colors for example, word choice or run-on sentences, or sometimes we have symbols. And those are really popular and people use them a lot. We also might have annotations on the side. So on a Word document, you might say, watch out for this, or can you tell me more about that? So that's part of indirect and direct feedback.
Okay, so what we're talking about today would fall closer to indirect feedback. Am I right?
Yes. So what today we're trying to demonstrate is how to try indirect feedback, because as you said before, our goal is to make confident, independent writers. We are their teachers and we know a lot of stuff, but eventually they're going to have to, write on their own. And we want them to write on their own and to feel good about and confident what they write, with in their second or even third language.
Okay, so I know another thing to keep in mind when we're talking about feedback, I've heard the term global and local. Can you just talk us through the difference?
Yes, so global errors refers to when we see a sentence, we see a paragraph, and what we're reading interferes with communication, so impedes comprehension. One of the examples is the subject verb object. Stream, for example, she, him loves. So that's something that we don't know. Well, who's loving what or whom? So it really stops you and you can't go on because you're trying to decide what they were trying to say. Local errors are not interfering with communication so much. So one of them would be articles, or in this case, prepositions. The car is on the garage. We know it's inside the garage unless it's a toy car inside a little toy garage, but we know it's going to be inside the garage. So you can say, oh, okay, I can still understand this sentence. It doesn't make me stop too much on my tracks. I can deal with this small error.
Okay, thank you for kind of clarifying those terms before we go further into our topic. I want to say hello to the people that are still joining us. Thank you for watching us on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live. I saw someone from Tarapoto. I saw someone from Piura. Keep commenting. We'd love to hear from you, where you're at in the world, and what do you think about giving writing feedback? We're going to keep asking some questions here. So today, as we talk about conferences, we really have 4 key ideas that we're going to weave through this presentation. The first one is that when you're giving feedback in this way, you want to choose 1 or 2 main points to address. You don't want to address everything that you could. You really need to be aware of if you're revising, if you're helping the students look at the big ideas and maybe put things in a different order, really grow and refine their writing, or if you're focusing in on editing, if you're looking at technical grammar points, small things, those little corrections that they need to do to improve the work. Both are important, but it's important to keep them straight and know what your goal is in the conference. Another really key principle is to show, to coach, and to really ask the students to apply. I know as a teacher, we want to help them fix everything, and we have to kind of hold back that impulse, hold back that instinct to give them the right answers there. And one of the best ways to do that is by asking a lot of questions. So I know there's kind of one more thing I want us to make sure we're clear on here. I think I've been saying mistakes and errors, and I've been using them interchangeably, which isn't technically correct, is it?
Um, well, we all do that, so it's fine. But for us as teachers, it's good to recognize what are we looking at and how to name it correctly, so that it makes our students' lives easier and our correcting lives easier as well. So we consider a mistake when it's just like a slip up, like an oops. The student knows the structure, the student knows what happened. So it's just that, oh, I forgot. Yeah, I know what it is, and I'm going to correct it. It's fine. But an error is something that the student either is not doesn't know or hasn't practiced enough to solidify that yet. So these two, if we make the distinction, it'll keep our students' language development level in mind. So we know, okay, they know the past tense, and this is just a mistake. I know they know this. Or maybe we're still in the beginning level and they're still struggling with, the ed or the incorrect, some of the verbs that have different writings. So it helps us as a way to kind of separate and say, okay, I'm going to spend some time in these errors, and I'm just going to say, please watch out for, I don't know, the S on the third person singular. We're an advanced level student, and you should know this. So this is just an oops.
So it's another thing we can keep in mind to help us kind of narrow down and focus on what feedback to give them. So let's keep going here. We actually, Dinorah and I worked together to make an example conference for you. So in just a moment here, we're going to watch a video where we are editing a text, where we are editing a paragraph together. And in this video, I'm going to be playing the teacher. Dinorah is going to be playing the student. And this is kind of an upper beginner, low intermediate sort of paragraph. And what I'd really like you to do is see if you can spot how we're using those 4 keys, asking questions, being selective in what sort of feedback, what errors we're addressing. So as we watch this video, prepare your thoughts there, because I'm going to ask after we're done, what examples did you see in action? Hi, Dinorah. I'm glad we get to look over this paragraph together. Can you read me what you wrote?
Yes. My first day at English was bad. I forgot the room for the class and went to wrong class. I was confused. Later, I walked to the correct class. The teacher waited for my late coming and I felt bad. All people looking at me. The teacher talked, but I cannot understand good. When the class finished, all people wanted to talk to the teacher and I cannot talk to her. I hope the class is more better tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Sounds like a horrible first day. How did you feel when it was over?
I felt really, really bad.
What's another word we might be able to use for really, really bad?
How about terrible?
Okay, terrible. Yes, that's stronger and more interesting. Let's use that. So let's see. There was another place in the paragraph where you said you felt bad. I think it's right here. It's this line. The teacher waited for my late coming. We'll say late arrival, my late arrival, and I felt bad. Was that the same type of bad?
No, that was bad. Everybody was looking at my face got red.
Oh, yeah, when your face gets red, that's embarrassed, maybe even really embarrassed. So let's change that. I think we can use a stronger word. So now let's look for some sentences that we can combine together. Let's take a look and see where we can find some more flow. How about these two? I was confused. Later, I walked to the correct class. How much later did that happen?
Maybe 5 minutes. It happened after.
Oh, after is a great word. We could put the two sentences together if we start with after. So you'd say, after the first thing, the second thing happened. Can you try to combine them and start with after?
After I was confused, later I walked to the correct class.
Okay, that's the right idea. But now you can drop the word later. We don't need that anymore.
Okay. After I was confused, I walked to the correct class.
Nice. Now, how about we changed after I was confused to after some confusion? Because your confusion, it lasted for a little while. And how about the word walked? Was the walking the really important part?
No, it was important that I found the class.
Okay, so found. I liked found. So let's put that in there instead. And can you put the whole sentence together for me?
Yes, after some confusion, I found the correct class.
Okay, nice. That is a much stronger sentence. It just reads better. I think it really gives the reader a good sense of what you're saying there. There's one other sentence here. How about this one? When the class finished, all of the people wanted to talk to the teacher, and I cannot talk to her. Why couldn't you talk to her?
I had to leave. I had another class.
Oh, okay. I think it's important that the reader knows that. If they know you had to leave, it's stronger. It really kind of shows the frustration because it doesn't sound like you just gave up.
When the class finished, I couldn't talk to my teacher because all people had questions and I didn't have time.
Mm. Had questions and I didn't have time. Yes, it's getting there. So it might sound just a little bit more natural if we said at the end of class instead of when the class finished, because we're talking about the time frame. And was it really all of the people that were talking to the teacher?
No, not all of the people, but a lot of people.
Okay, so let's put that in there because a lot of people had questions. So can you put it all together now?
At the end of class, I couldn't talk to my teacher because a lot of people had questions and I didn't have time.
Okay, great. All right. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to kind of break down that video now. So I'll ask the question again. As you watched that example of just a portion of a writer's conference, did you see any examples of the things we were talking about early on in the webinar? Did you see any examples of how questions were being used? Or even just, do you think we were in the reviewing or in the editing stage? What I really like about that clip, and I don't know how you feel, Dinorah, but what I like is that we were kind of having a conversation. Um, it was back and forth. We could adapt depending on what the student says, what the teacher says. You're just discussing it kind of as you go.
Yeah, and sometimes we forget that in our writing classes, at least in my writing classes, there was a lot of speaking going on before you actually start sitting down and writing. So there's a lot of back and forth between the students themselves or the teacher and the student. So asking a lot of questions is is essential, and the right questions too. So instead of just saying, oh, this is too big or this is not long enough, trying to kind of ask, what about this? And what do you think this word is? So asking a lot of questions is good.
And I think you make a really good point there. This was an integrated, I mean, this is a writing conference in a writing class, but we are integrating all four of the skills because we're talking about it. There's reading going on, there's listening, there's speaking. Um, there's a point there about using different colors for different types of mistakes. We couldn't quite do that on the Google Doc that we were editing live, but we were definitely using the highlighting exactly. Um, I don't know if you caught kind of my two areas of focus as we were editing there was working on vocabulary, and really I kind of narrowed down on the word bad. Bad is one of those words that is simple, it's boring. It's a great one to be able to teach students how to replace in their writing. So we worked on that. And then the other focus was how to combine sentences to make them a little bit longer, to give it better flow. This was definitely in the reviewing stage. We weren't editing little tiny details. We're still kind of looking at the bigger picture there. So the result is there was some improvement. There was some improvement in the text. So there's kind of on the left-hand side is where it started. On the right-hand side is where it is as we're continuing, but it isn't finished. It still needs some more work. So we have a second video coming up here.
And in this second video, Rachel's still the teacher, I'm still the student. And what we want you to think about is how does the teacher get the student to expand the writing? So what does the teacher do? What kind of strategies, what kind of, one of those keys that we were talking about before? How does she go about making sure that the paragraph's still good, it's readable, is good, correct grammar most of the time, but how do we expand that into the writing to make it even better, and even making our confident writer feel better about what they're presenting to us?
Was there anything else that went wrong? Any more details from that class we should add?
I didn't know people, and I didn't have my books.
So what do you call people you didn't know?
Strangers.
Okay, so let's say the class was full of strangers. That's kind of a rich expression. There were a lot of them. So the class was full of strangers, and I didn't have my books with me. Where would you add this sentence into the paragraph?
Here, by not understand the teacher.
Okay, so let's move that up here. Let's just copy paste that up here. Okay, so this paragraph sounds a lot better than when we started. The sentences are longer, they have more variety. I think there's still a few grammar things to fix.
So what we saw here is, maybe somebody can type it for us. What were we looking at? How did we get to expand the writing? So as we kind of excuse me, while we wait for some responses, I would say that I always ask my students to think, who are they writing to? Yes, it's the teacher, it's my eyes, it's, what I expect them to do, but to think of their audience, to think of, who is this going to? Is this going to persuade somebody? Is this going to describe something for, your friends, things like that. So I always tell them about that. And as I tell them about that, I tell them, paint the picture in your reader's mind. So maybe we have some answers that are coming in to see how did we expand this expansion of the writing. And as they come in, I'll let you know that it's adding details. Sometimes students know the meaning, and sometimes they know the word. They know terrible. They can expand, their vocabulary. They're probably knowing, and it's just this conversation that we have with the student. Be more descriptive. Think about your senses. Think about, what did it smell like? What was it felt like? What was going on in the background? And then something that we stress a lot in our writing conferences is improving, not just going, okay, give me all the corrections and then maybe I'll change it or not. But it's about improving. It's about this progress that is not, beginning, end, and that's all you get from the teacher. But it's a cycle, and it's progress over time.
So speaking of beginning, middle, end, we have a third video here to kind of wrap up our writers' conference on this paragraph. And as you watch this one, I would really like you to think about, why did we wait so long to make some really obvious grammar corrections? Maybe you've been looking at the previous versions and your skin was kind of crawling because you saw a mistake and you really wanted to see it fixed. So why did we wait for this third segment to work on that? So let's take a look at some of these problems that the program has underlined. Let's right click on this one. Can you read that? What is it telling us to add to the sentence?
To the wrong.
Okay, so can you read the whole sentence now that we've added the in there?
I forgot the room for the class and went to the wrong class.
Great. Oh, here's one that we already talked about a little bit earlier. We wouldn't use coming, we'd just change it to arrival. So when you arrive late to a class. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Can you right click on that? What does it tell us we need to add?
All the people.
Oh, it's that the again. We have that pesky the. All right. Let's see. All the people looking at me. That's still not quite a complete sentence. We need another verb in here. Remember, when we have looking, we need a verb before it. And this is in the past. So in the past, for all the people, what might we put there? All the people looking at me.
Were.
Great. Okay. All the people were looking at me. Let's see. So that was in the past. Oh, I think this next one is about keeping it in the past as well. So you have the teacher talked, but I
couldn't. Yeah.
Couldn't. Great catch. Couldn't understand. And we'd say well. I couldn't understand well.
Oh, okay.
See, at the end of class, I couldn't talk to my teacher because a lot of people had questions and I didn't have the time. I hope the class is, oh, you have an extra word in here. When we use the word better, we don't need more. So go ahead and change that.
Better.
I hope the class is better tomorrow. Okay, this looks great now.
Thank you. Thank you, Teacher Rachel, for
my perfect student.
So one of our questions to you was, why did we wait until the end to do the grammar? So some of you might have written something. Some of you might be thinking, well, that's what I do. That's what I learned. That's what I learned to do. But we want to change our mindset of revision of this writer's workshop, of this conferencing. So we'd like to start with the overall feel. How does it flow? We go from the general to the specific, and we go with the content first, right? So we focus on the very bad day, feeling embarrassed, feeling terrible. And then we said, okay, now that we're done with this feel, this flow, let's look at the little things to improve. I think we're turning upside down writing feedback in this way, and this has been done for a while. The Writers' Workshop has been done for a while, but it still takes us a lot of time to really focus because we have so many students, or we're pressed in time. So we just go, okay, we were joking earlier, my red pen or my blue pen or my purple pen, right? And so we just go, okay, red, correction. And we need to start teaching ourselves and our students, wait a minute, let's look at the whole picture first, and then let's go down into the grammar point. Yes, grammar is important. We're not taking away grammar. We're just saying, okay, that's it. You're on your own. But we want to make sure that there's flow, that there's a good feel, and that they're thinking about their audience, and that they know that at the end the grammar is gonna come through. And this is our last paragraph. So we went from a paragraph that we all agree it's pretty decent. I mean, they're not things that impede comprehension. It's good. It's basic. It's somehow descriptive. But then we expanded. We gave it a little more ways to make people really feel that moment. The word embarrassed, the word terrible, the word strangers. And then we also fix the timing, like at the end of class. Um, there are some things that we fix as far as grammar. For most of you, our audience is Spanish speaking audience. We love to talk with the ing, all people talking, all people listening. And so that's something that, we can tell our students, well, there's an extra, there's something extra that we need from there. Yeah, so we will talk about focused and unfocused. So we have done a certain kind of feedback today. We've focused on many things, but more importantly, we have done unfocused feedback. So basically, looking at the entire structure in a writing assignment. This was possibly a prompt that said, "Describe your first day of class," or "Describe a day that was terrible last week during your week," and we talked about that. But it could also be a focus type of feedback where you target a specific point or a structure in a writing assignment. For example, most of you are using books with some kind of topic or some kind of theme. And for example, this could have been a unit on the past tense. So while you're writing and correcting your students' papers, you can say, okay, for this unit, you can focus, or we are going to focus on the past tense and only past tense. And yes, I will correct some vocabulary and we'll look at some mistakes, some errors, but our focus is going to be the past tense so that they know they must really pay attention and they really must try hard to complete that objective, the past tense, for example.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because the example that we gave here was unfocused feedback. It was looking kind of holistically at many ways to improve the paragraph, but that takes a while. I mean, if you put those clips together, I think we were working on that paragraph for about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 minutes there. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges that teachers run into when they are trying to implement a writing conference, is that it does take time. You have to have something that the other students are doing. You may have many, many students to work with. Sometimes using a focused conference where you tell them in advance, this is what you're going to work on, this is what we're going to conference about, you can go a lot faster than what we demonstrated here. If you aren't looking at everything, you can. It also goes slow in the sense that one meeting will probably not be enough to make a perfect essay, because you are narrowing it down. You, in an ideal world, might need to conference more than one time. So both of those are kind of time considerations that may not be realistic. So I often have to think of, let's create a rotation. Even if I only get to conference with each student one time or 2 times in the semester, if we can have a really quality conference, I hope they'll walk away from that remembering a few points that they can implement, and they will apply it much more than if I just use the green pen. If I just used my green pen and made a lot of corrections, but they didn't get to internalize it.
Right. And speaking of our students, sometimes the challenge is that our students can't express what they wanted. So they might not, I was a okay student and she asked me, what is another word for bad? And I said, terrible. As an intermediate student, I could come up with that word. But maybe our beginner students can't think of, besides bad, what else they should do. Or even if they're more advanced students, they might say, well, what do you mean, in other words? This is how I feel. So they might not be able to express, or they might not have the tools yet to express what they want. If we ask them, why did you write this sentence? Or what was your thought process when you wrote this sentence? And then this is also a big, big shift for students. They expect those red marks. They expect those, detail corrections, all of those things for us. And so we might just have to start slowly saying, okay, yes, I'll correct maybe this paragraph or this couple of sentences, for the rest of the paragraph or the rest of the essay, let's have a conference. Let's talk. And then we can work together, because again, the point is to make confident, independent second language writers. It takes a while, but it can be done.
Oh, I love this comment that Santi just wrote here on Facebook. She was asking, is it possible to do this in pairs, to have two students meet and ask each other questions and give each other feedback? And that's a strategy that I love to use in my classes. We call it peer feedback. I think it's so valuable because you are using each other's time. And when you teach the students how to do that, they can start also reflecting on their own essay. So that's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that, Santi. It really can change the dynamics of how your students approach writing.
And there was another comment real quick from Yolanda Ramos. She said it's important to let students focus on their thoughts to generate ideas, the content before correction. Yeah. So that's very important, because again, like we said, in my writing classes, my students ask me, we're talking a lot in this class. I thought it was more writing. And they're frustrated that they're not writing. And I said, well, I want your ideas just to come out of your head, right? You have to vocalize it. You have to get them out into the space. And then you see them. Oh, yeah, those are my ideas. Or, oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I'm gonna write it down. So we come to the benefits. So what's good about conferencing? We said students take ownership of their work, right? So they said, okay, I sat with this teacher, but actually I was telling her what was wrong with my paper. She was kind of like coaching me and guiding me. So that's ownership. Ownership is very important for our students. They receive immediate feedback and are able to ask for clarification if we have these conferences. And again, it doesn't have to be their whole 5-paragraph essay or, every single homework, but we can choose some things and we can say, okay, for this one, you get my, immediate feedback from me. It also reinforces other language skills and strategies, thinking out loud, brainstorming, asking, this give and take from the student and the teacher. And it promotes a positive attitude about writing in a second language. It's not, again, this linear, I give my teacher the paper, my teacher corrects it, and then it's done. It's this cycle where we ask for revising, editing. We pass it, like our friends were just talking about, our colleagues passing it to a friend, passing it to self-assessment, and that's something positive that we can bring to us students.
Oh, yes. Great point there, Daniela. The more they talk, the more ideas they gather. Exactly. But I want to kind of ask you here, we've been talking about this as something that we've both been doing in our classrooms for years, really. How does this different in our current reality? I mean, I'm teaching online. I know you've been teaching online. How is this different?
So we're basically not sitting next to our student and doing, the red pen or the purple or green pen with them. But we can do something what we just model. Use a screen sharing option with your preferred online platform. We use Google Docs because we both have that. And it's a way for your teacher to highlight things. Both of you can work in the document at the same time. Both of you can type, generate ideas that way. And like Rachel was saying, we need to build a rotation, right? Because at least some of my classes, I used to say, okay, this group of people come at this time and this group of people come at this time, but we can't do that now. So find a way to rotate your students and find a way to say, okay, during this period of time, I'm going to do 2 writing conferences with you. And build something like that with your class.
And I just wanted to add in there, We were using Google Docs and video when we recorded for the webinar, but sometimes we are just on a shared document and then on a WhatsApp call or on the phone with some of my students who don't have the strongest internet connection. You can still get into a shared document from your phone, and that can be a way that you can see what the other person is typing. You don't have to have such a strong internet connection that you're doing it by video.
Yes, those are some of the asynchronous strategies that we can use. Recording your feedback also in a screen capture app. I use something called TextSmith Capture, and you can open a Word document or anything that you're working on, and you can record yourself saying, "Hi, let's look at your paragraph," and you can highlight, do whatever you're doing for your students on a Word document. They get sent the link, and they can listen to you. And just like Rachel said, we can use a Google Doc and just call each other if that's all it takes. Or even if we're not using a Google Doc, if you just have, something on your screen and your student is on the phone, you can still give them feedback. Give them feedback that way. So
one of my students, she had to take a picture of her paper. There wasn't any way to do it online, so she just used her phone and took a picture and sent me the photo, and then we conferenced.
Yes, that's the way it is. That's the way we can do it now. So let's review real quick the 4 keys to successful conferencing. Choosing 1 or 2 points to address, deciding if you're revising, so the big ideas, or editing, coach the students, show the students more than, not just to fix everything. Try to highlight, make them aware of what's going on in their paper, and ask a lot of questions. So here are some resources that have helped me in the past. These are some people that everybody should know about that are second language writer experts. Dr. Dana Ferris in California, Nigel Kaplan, and Dr. Deborah Crescent. So you can Google these people, read their articles. Hopefully you'll have some sort of a way to get their books, and the TextSmith Capture free screen capture video software that I use.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you again so much, Dinorah, for being here today and for sharing your expertise. Now, before we open it up for questions here, I have 2 announcements to make. First of all, I want to invite everyone who's watching, if you would like to continue talking about this topic, if you would like to discuss how you give writing feedback or maybe ask some more questions about writing conferences, tomorrow we're going to hold a discussion group, a small discussion group. So you need to sign up in advance. But 24 hours after we had this webinar or we started this webinar, we're going to have a discussion group on Zoom. So if you want to be a part of that, you can follow that link. We'll post it onto the Facebook page, or there's a QR code. If you know how to take a picture of that, follow it with your phone. I would really like to see you tomorrow in the discussion group. And then one other thing, I'm really excited I get to tell you about this. So coming up in October, the Relo Andes office is going to be working with a school called Change, a business called Change, and we're putting on a regional virtual conference for English teachers. We'll be posting some more information about that soon. They have a great plan as far as making these presentations very relevant to teaching and our current reality of teaching. Right now, we are in the call for proposal stage. So if you have some thoughts, if you have ideas about things that have been working for you in the distance environment, how we can all be innovating, we'll post some information about that as well. We would love to have you present possibly, and definitely have you attend. So mark that on your calendars for the future. So without further ado, I want to open it up to some questions. Please, if you're watching us on Facebook Live or on YouTube Live, go ahead and type your questions into the chat. We would love to answer some of those. We have a question here about what tools we use to edit our slides. We made all of these slides in PowerPoint. So everything was in PowerPoint or just in a simple paint program when I took like a screenshot of the video and then cut it out and put it in there.
And I've
Nothing too.
used Google Slides. I've used it before, and it's compatible. Um, yeah. And we had a
Right.
question before about large groups. So
Mhm.
what about if you have 25, 35, 40 students? Or, you have 4 or 5 sections of writing. So what I like to do is I like to layer my feedback. What I mean is I like to do some peer feedback, group feedback, self feedback, and then I insert myself there in a writing conference. So maybe by the time they get to you, they've had some stages of revision and editing. And so it's a little less work for you, but it's also helping the students give each other feedback. And that's probably another webinar. But peer feedback and self feedback, doing a checklist. Have you, for example, have you used the past tense in your sentences? Have you revised for descriptive vocabulary? And so they can check, and you can see the piece of paper saying, "Oh yeah, you checked all of these, but they're not on the paper that you're giving me. So what's going on here?" So I do that often in my classes.
Yes, thank you for sharing, because I know that's the situation facing all of us. I think is how do you budget your time? How do you find the way to reach out to all the students that you're responsible for? So I love that idea. Layers of feedback. I think while you were sharing that, I saw a comment pop up about using Flipgrid, and that's so cool because I'm a big fan of Flipgrid. I use it a lot for conversation and for reading comprehension type responses, but using it here for writing, that would be another way to give feedback back and forth to students, because you can comment on their comments, or even with the peer feedback, you could have them. That's another tool to think of using in there.
Right. There's some more comments coming in. Questions play an important role for helping them find out and correct their mistakes. Yes, yes. And asking, um, I've learned not to ask yes or no questions.
Yes.
Is this correct? They're going to say no. So asking more questions that you can have follow-ups, asking questions where the students can really explain. So that's key to a writing conference.
Yeah, we keep saying student autonomy is the key to success this year, and I think all of this helps them develop it. Yeah.
Good. So we might have some more questions, but if you have some more questions, you can send them to Rachel tomorrow to the Zoom discussion group, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Oh, I love this comment I'm seeing here, is to make sure you tell your students that mistakes are natural. They are part of learning. Yes.
Yes, we're looking for progress. And again, that's that shift in our mindset of, this semester I'm going to be perfect at writing. Well, yes, that's a very nice goal, but we want to see progress and we want to see development, right? I always tell my students, I don't expect perfection. So don't go and Google Translate your paper, please. I want to see errors. I want to see mistakes, because that's how we learn, right? I, as a second language writer, been in the United States for a long time. I still need help editing papers that I submit, presentations I do. So you never stop learning, and people are always ready to help you edit.
Well, thank you so much again for being here, Dinorah. I've got kind of my main takeaways here for writing conferences, focusing on the process and asking lots of questions. So I hope I will see many of you tomorrow for our discussion group. Don't forget to sign up. And thank you for watching the Relo Andes webinar. We'll be back again next month.